Ladies and gentlemen, we got something great going on here for you tonight at Talking with a Dad, something we've been super pumped about, waiting for patiently but anxiously. You'll recognize our guests from such projects as Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge, Death Stranding, Star Wars, The Old Republic, and soon, something I'm really pumped up for, Superman, the Man of Tomorrow. Please help me welcome our guest, Ike Amadi.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 30 of the Talking with a Dad podcast. Tonight is our first time we have a guest. This is very exciting. I'll leave Steve to introduce him. Stevie?
You know what? I've been waiting for this for a moment, folks. Put this man on the hot seat, to have him in front of a camera and get everything on the record for the first time.
So aggressive.
That's just
He's
Steve.
my brother. He's my buddy. And more importantly, he's a really, really great friend. I want to introduce everyone to Ike Amadi. How you doing tonight, brother?
Good, man. I'm good. I'm good.
I see you're broadcasting with us from your secret bunker there, and
that's true.
Your food supply stocked.
I've got my food supplies, my bug proteins, the whole bit, just everything good to go.
Yeah. So Ike is a voice actor, professional voice actor. Clearly, has a sound booth. This is like a dream of mine, is to be a voice actor or be in radio for like forever, since I was like 12 or something like that. Yeah, super long. I've always either wanted to do voice acting or be on radio was always my my passion for some reason. That's why I started making YouTube videos like a decade ago. So I started streaming on Twitch 8 or 9 years ago at this point. Like, I always wanted to do that. So it's super cool to have you on. You've been in an incredible amount of games and in TV. You guys would definitely recognize him after this for sure, because he's been in some, very notable, very significant titles. So Steve, you wanna start it off?
So, Ike, I've always wanted to ask you a question, man. We've spent time with each other, but the one thing we've never done before is we've never talked about nerdom, and we've never talked about fandom. So this is the first thing I got to ask you.
That's true. Yeah.
Are you you're a big guy? You're a big, imposing guy. We're two big, imposing guys. Our first encounter, I think we talked about MMA, and then we kind of both flexed out. I got to know, man. Like, are you a nerd? And if you are a nerd, what do you nerd out over?
That's the thing, is like, if you would have asked me that question maybe 10 years ago, I would have said absolutely, But now I feel like being a nerd it's come out of the dark, so to speak, or the closet, or whatever you want to say, and has become mainstream. And a lot of the stuff that people call nerddom that is mainstream now, I just find irritating. Because the thing to me was that I was always about, I read comic books when I was young. There were characters that I liked. There were things in media that I enjoyed that weren't that popular. And I was fine with that. I had a lot of different tastes, but it never defined me. You know what I mean? Just because I could tell you what Superman's backstory was, or what comic book, The Flash did this in, or whatever, it was something I enjoyed. But now I feel like being a nerd means that you have to give your whole life and existence, and it has to define you completely. And if this person doesn't do this the way I wanted to, then I have to get angry and have to fight and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it's not that serious. My identity is not in the things that I like. And I feel like that's what being a nerd has become. So I would say I'm an old school nerd, the type back in the day who, did this on the side, and that was what I did. But I had many other facets to who I was. So
you haven't let the subculture become the dominant culture and define who you are, is what you're saying. That's what
I kind of hate what the subculture has become, to be honest with you. I've hated it.
Well, I'm a toxic nerd, so I'm going to ask you a few toxic nerd questions. I am an absolute toxic nerd. I don't know if you know this. I got into a fight with a 6-year-old over a seat at Star Wars, and he won, and I got escorted out. So Zach was there. He was
I was surprised by that. I wish my response was, really? Yeah.
Me too.
Wait, what are you not surprised by it? Me losing the fight or the fight happening? You're like,
I'm going to say both.
But so, like Zach was saying, man, you have an extensive resume, and the reason I asked you the nerding question, because as I was prepping myself for this interview, it's been a while since I looked at the last thing I remember really knowing that you were in, I was playing Shadow of War, the Lord of the Rings game. And I didn't even know you were attached to that title until I was playing and the character came up and I was like, holy smokes, that's Ike, man. And then so that made me go kind of on a rabbit hole. And I just wanted to ask you, man, you landed something that most people are really pumped up for. And I just got to know if you're done with it, if you're allowed to talk about it, the Superman Man of Tomorrow. So this thing has got a lot of buzz around it. And like, can you talk about it? Or if you can't,
I mean, to a limited degree.
Okay.
Because it's been announced. And here's the thing, again, I'm not big on social media. I just never was. And so something that happens is like they'll announce something on like Twitter. This is what happened with Superman, is that they announce it on Twitter, and then I'll get a bunch of, because I do have a Twitter account, but I never check it. And so I'll get a bunch of Twitter stuff, and I turned off all the notifications because I hate to be bothered by it. But days later, literally today, I'll get a text. No, 2 days ago, I get a text message from a friend of mine, and it's like, "Oh, you're Martian Manhunter," and I'm like, "No, what are you talking about?" And then I have to go check and see if it's announced, and I'm like, "Oh yes, okay, yeah." And so that was what happened. So I can talk about it to a limited degree, but there's a lot. There's a lot to it.
All right, I'll try to ask as vague a question, but I'm just going to bring you up on something you may or may not know about. It's called the blurred community. That's the black nerd community.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
And so I don't know if you knew this prior to the Martian Manhunter thing, but he is, like Piccolo, the most celebrated green black man in all of comics. I've seen militant brothers who have picks in their hair and were just the angriest people on earth. But you bring up Martian Manhunter, they're like, "Oh yeah, I love that cat." Did you know anything about that character before you stepped into the role?
Yeah, I not only did I appreciate. Now I'm gonna forget the actor's name from the Justice League cartoons of the early 2000s.
Right.
Was when, I mean, I knew about Martian Manhunter a little bit. I'd read some of the comic books, like is it Justice League Doom, where Batman takes apart the Justice League, where he's had some prominent roles and everything, so I was aware of him. And then also, having watched quite a few episodes of that TV show, I was familiar with him there. And so when we went in to audition for the part, I kind of had a vague idea, but I think they were kind of looking for something similar, but of course distinct. And so one of the things I really like about that character is that he's respectable. You know what I mean? Overall. And here's another fun fact. That's not the first time I've played Martian Manhunter. I also played him, in a game, Batman 2 or 3, Lego Batman 2 or 3. I forget which one it was. But it's kind of the same idea. And I liked that game specifically because the lines they wrote for him were really funny. But then also as a character, I appreciate him a lot. I did not know he was well respected in the blurred community, but that's a bonus as well.
I mean, I look, I'm about to send you a link. I know your Facebook account is probably deactivated, but I'm going to tell you 100%.
Yeah.
He is one of the most celebrated characters. And I just want to ask you another question, man, because, and this is something you told me, but I instantly thought this was the coolest thing on earth. So me and EK met about 4 years ago after our initial conversation about Ronda Rousey losing. I believe it was the Holly Holmes fight. That's what we were talking about.
That's what it was. Yeah.
I noticed you had a very distinct voice, so I naturally tried to make my voice a little bit deeper, and I lost that contrast. I was like going back and forth.
Oh my god!
But we started talking about like comics and stuff, and we hung out a few times. You told me about the Thanos situation. Would you mind just talking about that a little bit? About, were you up for consideration for Thanos originally in the Avengers?
Okay, so when back before, when the MCU was going on, right? They had a number of auditions for the voice of Thanos, right? But I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about what it was. So I read for it, I think twice, and then nothing really happened. And it wasn't until maybe, I don't know, a year later, I was talking to somebody over at Marvel who was saying, "Oh yeah, I heard, your voice, it was actually between you and somebody else, and you didn't get it, and so on and so forth like that. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I found out later that I actually knew the guy who was the voice in the first Avengers movie, right?
Okay.
And so when he turns and says something, is speaking from the chair, I knew who that guy was. And unfortunately, I think he was supposed to be Thanos until, you know how Hollywood is, things change, and it ends up being Josh Brolin. So,
all right. I'm gonna let you. I'll take this whole thing over, Zach. Go ahead. I know Zach's got a burning question.
I'm not a nerd in that regard at all. I don't do superheroes. I don't do comics. I like video games. One of my favorite video games of all time, Call of Duty series. I noticed that you are in a few of the Call of Duty series titles, including Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, which are two of my favorite games actually in the series. What is it like working with just an enormous corporation like Activision? Clearly not the biggest corporation you work with. Obviously, you in ties with Marvel and DC because you are working on all those projects. But what is it like working for someone like Activision?
Well, actually, it's funny. I think everybody has sort of a different relationship with Activision, but I think from my end, it's always been kind of personal. The person that I've worked with, the casting director that I've worked with who does actually a lot of that, her name's Ivy Eisenberg. She's amazing. And she goes out of her way to make it a really personal type of thing. And she makes sure that the connections between the team working in Activision and the actors are well bonded. She just does a great job of kind of grounding the whole thing and bringing it down to earth. So on a situation like that, you're going in and Activision Call of Duty has 3 different teams now, I think. And at that time, I think they only had 2 at that, or maybe they had just gotten the 3rd one. So there's Sledgehammer, there's
Treyarch, and then there's Infinity Ward.
And Infinity Ward. So I think I've only worked with Treyarch and Infinity Ward. But anyway, or maybe I don't know. I can never keep all this.
Advanced Warfare was designed by Sledgehammer. It was.
Yeah.
Advanced Warfare was designed by Sledgehammer.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. So going in there, you've got like that game in particular. I remember. I can't even remember the amount of lines it was. It was an insane amount of lines, and you're yelling 90% of them.
Right.
And so it's this grueling, and this is another thing that happened with the strike was that some of these sessions would last 4 hours and you're just yelling for 4 hours, which means that the next day you can't really do anything else, and for me, one of the things I've really pushed for in my career is diversity, meaning that in the morning I'll be working on a promo. In the afternoon, I'm doing a commercial, or midday, I'm doing a commercial. And then in the afternoon, I'm working on a video game or an animation. I try to make sure that I'm diversifying what I'm working on. It's never just, I only do video games or I only do this. I try to do a little bit of everything and try to keep, all those plates spinning simultaneously. So I needed to be able to go do this session, come out and be okay and do that. So It was during that time that I I learned to be able to speak up for myself and develop those relationships with them and be able to say, hey, this works, this doesn't. And I got to say the people at Activision always treated me very well. We got through those thousands of lines and things went well. So it's a good memory for me.
You definitely worked on a few of the games. Yeah, so that's actually huge. Like one of my dreams forever has been to work on a Call of Duty game. I've played, I don't even know, thousands of hours of in my life, probably close to 10,000 hours, I would think. Wow. It is one of my favorite games of all time. But it's huge, right? So there's a million people working on these games, and I was curious because I hear from a lot of the coding and developing side is that those guys are under such a time crunch, like definitely towards the end of the game, that could get very daunting and very grueling, and they're working 20-hour days at times to get the game out because they are on a every year cycle. So okay, so that's really interesting actually. Other games here, you've worked on a few of the Fallout games. Bethesda, an entirely different company from what I hear. They take their time with things. They do it at their own pace. Do you have a favorite game because I'm the game guy, right? I don't watch the
Yeah,
TV. I don't watch the comics and stuff, which is like, it's super cool that you do that too. Have you had a favorite game that you've worked on?
I do, but I'm working on it right now, and I can't
Oh,
talk about it.
okay, okay.
It releases some point this year, and it's going to be, I think, amazing. I
Okay.
think, and working on it has been one of the best experiences of my career, honestly.
Oh,
Wow.
really cool.
Yeah.
That's super interesting because there's only at this point there's only going to be a few games come out this year because of the lockdown and stuff. So you guys can speculate
Val,
down
that
in
shall
the
not be named.
right. You guys
Don't
can
say it.
speculate down on the down in the comments below on which game UK here is going to be in. Throw back over to Steve for more of this this nerddom talk while I sip on my beer.
Yeah, cooking my tinfoil hat. Like, so I'm gonna do a humble brag for you here, man. So we got Mortal Kombat
Okay.
11. That just came out. What was that
Hmm.
experience like working on that one?
That was great too. Actually, one of the things I really like, one of the things that drives me in working in video games is the advent of the story.
Right.
A game like Mortal Kombat, it's a fighting game, so you don't expect too much from it. But being able to, you know, be a part of such great storytelling, I don't know if I can mention the guys that worked on it. I don't want to get in trouble, but uh, the creative team over there is just really great, and they go out of their way to plan and set things up, and I really enjoyed working on that game, chiefly because of the people that I got to work with. They did such a great job with writing, but also giving me the leeway to be able to play around. I mean, Shao Kahn was somebody who, to be honest, I knew a little bit about, but when I got into it, I was like, oh, his lines are just so much fun. And I know,
Yeah.
I sometimes I read some of the comments, and I know people have their criticisms, and that's great. I'm just as happy with the criticisms as I am with the accolades. But overall, I just really enjoyed that working on that game.
Because the one thing I've always picked up from you, man, is that integrity and in doing things excellent has always been a huge thing for you. And I'm just
Yes.
wondering, in these scenarios, when you're going into these situations, has there ever been, you don't have to name a company, has there ever been a
Mm.
time where you're just like, man, creatively, as a performer, as an artist, this is not what I'm into? Because me and Zach were talking about a streamer that he enjoys who's turned down a bunch of, what was it, like 3 or 4 big endorsements in the last month, Zach?
Yeah, the last one he got an endorsement. It was for an hour and a half over a 30-day period. It was an hour and a half total for $20,000. And he turned it down because it would be negative for his brand. So
Have you ever found
Yeah.
yourself in a situation where you're just like, you know what,
Uh,
not happening, not happening?
Man, it's gotten to be weekly now. It's gotten to be
Okay.
weekly because the truth is that I feel like there's this struggle that's going on in our industry as a whole, which is, and I'm speaking about video games specifically. Um, the thing about video games is that they're a new genre, relatively, genre of entertainment, relatively. And so there's been this in the last 10 years push towards maturity, in quotes, maturity.
Yeah.
And so what that has turned into is do the most salacious thing you possibly can because that'll get eyeballs. And so story depth, interesting characters, good writing, all that stuff gets pushed to the wayside in order to get sort of the eyeballs. You know what I mean? It's almost like the pornification of video games. It's like
Right.
whatever the most salacious thing is, let's do that. And I hate that. And so there's been more than once where, and the funny thing about video games, the other thing is that if I audition for a animated series or a movie, I tend to know a fair amount about what it is, especially in this day and age because there's so many sequels coming out. When I get to read for this or that, I can go look it up and see what they already did and have an idea of what I'm walking into. But
Right.
oftentimes in video games, that's even if there is a sequel, it's so secretive that many times you don't really understand what you're signing up for. And from time to time, unfortunately, when I do find out what it is or who's writing it or whatever, I have to take a step back because, and it's not so much about protecting my brand, even though that is, I guess, a consideration. It's more so that in my mind, I do this because I love stories and I want to be the best possible storyteller I can be. And I want to work with people who have that same ambition. And so if you don't have that same ambition, I don't have anything against you. I just don't want to work with you. That's all.
Okay.
That makes total sense. So I'm gonna get a little bit nerdy on you here because I should have done this in the beginning, but Zach called it out. So we got Lego DC supervillains, we got Voltron, legendary defender, TV series, amazing by the way. Binge watched that whole thing. But then the Middle Earth Shadow of War, that's an interesting one, right? Because I know you've been lead in some games before, but I didn't realize you had an entire DLC pack where you were the featured character on this. And this, Zach, I gotta tell you honestly, there are 2 DLCs that came out with this. I'm not saying this because he's my friend. Yours was definitely a very interesting one because it took an exploration in some Tolkien lore that's not really explored too much. What was that like? Like, did you know going in that you're going to get the DLC, or did they present that to you later?
I had no idea. In fact, that game was directed by voice directed by Troy Baker, and so we had met a couple of times before that. But it was on that game that I really got to know him, and him and the rest of the team that worked on it. They had just a natural way of working that was great. I had no idea about the DLC, but just working on the main game was an excellent experience. So when the DLC came into it, I was like, man, these writers are excellent, because I feel like the Tolkien universe has so much to be explored in it. It has so many different ways that you could play around. And for them not to go the sort of rote route and do kind of a retread of the same thing, but to go in a different area, I thought it was excellent. When I first heard about it, we were I forget what that was called. It doesn't matter. I never remember any of this stuff years on. But the point is that it was a great experience, and I'm very happy to have worked on that.
And you know, it's funny because I'm trying to get Zach to play it. I'm probably going to purchase it for him, but he's weird that way. You can't purchase something and not tell him about it and like send it to him. He'll definitely return it to your credit card. But so the one thing I noticed when I was playing the DLC, man, is like it's different when you know that someone puts a lot into the craft of it, right? So I don't know the voice actor behind the main character of that game. The name always escapes me, but
that's true.
Watching your character develop in that game from the early onset was amazing. I want to ask you about that type of character development and how you see nerddom now and like just popular culture with movies. Like say something like the MCU. Like you and I both really enjoyed the last 2 installments of the Avengers. Have you heard anything about the direction they're going in now? And does any of that kind of make you nervous as an old school nerd?
Am I allowed to talk about this? Am I going to get canceled? Is there somebody waiting to?
No, I think we'll get canceled. You'll get a slap on the wrist. Don't worry, we'll pop up somewhere else.
Honestly, a little less it's 2 things. One, I have to admit that, look, putting together anything of any scope this day and age is super difficult. You have a lot of people who have a lot of opinions and not that much skill, or a lot of skill and a lot of opinions, and they're all trying to get something done. But being able to bring them all together to complete one vision and one ambition is very difficult. And then you have the suits on the other side telling you this has got to be marketable, this has got to be this, and blah, blah, blah. So it's actually very difficult to get something. A lot of people, you know, they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's how I see most of the entertainment industry, is that people come into it with such great aspirations and good intentions, and they want to do this and they think it's good. But by the time they get put through the ringer of all the things that they have to go through, what comes out doesn't quite look like what they hoped. And that's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. That being said, I think that, again, I'm very against this. Like, one of the things that that I find myself talking about all the time is this thing about representation. Right? I hear this all the time about, we need representation. We need representation. And I'm like, I don't think so. And I know I have a different perspective because I wasn't born in the United States. I'm African. But if you think I'm teaching my children to look to the television for their value, I'm just not. You know what I mean? I don't need that. I don't need the character that I see in front of me to look like me. I don't need them to sound like me. I need them to tell a great story. I need them to be excellent. And so if, for instance, like I was talking with a Nigerian friend of mine about this, and he was talking about, you know, Nigerians in general. We're not well represented in Hollywood. We're just not. We're in a very low. But where we are well represented is in medicine. There are more Nigerians
Yeah.
graduating from med school than any other group in the world, I think. You know, and so that's where, as a culture, as a value set, that's where we put ourselves. And those who go into entertainment, by all means, be excellent. But I just want, I don't like this idea that I have to derive who I am and all from my entertainment. That's just not what I do. You know, I want to go in, I want to tell excellent stories. I want to move people. I want to touch you and reach you where you are, regardless of what you look like, regardless of what your experience. And the way you do that is by telling excellent stories. And so as long as they do that, I think things will work out. If they don't do that, I think anyone is going to have a problem on their hands.
Let me ask you a quick rapid fire question. And again, I don't want you to burn yourself here. I know you read comic books. Me and Zach did an episode where I laid it on Zach one night. Zach doesn't read a lot of comics, but we were talking.
Zero. I've read zero comic books in my entire life.
We were talking about that same thing, the representation. We did an episode on the New Warriors. I don't know if you remember this comics. It was from the '90s era comic book time where everything was high octane, and you know it was just cool to have for Marvel to have a team like Teen Titans. Basically, it was their version. Comic book wax and wane. They had a huge story arc in the Civil War comic book series when that happened, but they've been revitalized and there's new characters that have been brought up. For the sake of no one getting cultured, I'm not going to bring up the names of the characters, but they've created some new dynamics in there that touch on the things you were talking about representation versus a good story. Yeah. Now, I went to go see Star Wars. Zach bailed on that, right? He bailed. He did not show up to the theater. You didn't show up to the
No, I believe the initial invitation had been sent out, and I said I respectfully decline. I just wouldn't enjoy it.
Wait. Can I ask why you didn't go? Just out of curiosity.
Actually, the main reason is that I had started a new job. They were going to like an 11 o'clock showing, and I had to be to work an hour away at 8 a.m. That's the main reason. But I also don't enjoy Star Wars. I've seen every generally. I've seen every single the old 2 trilogies. I've seen the oldest new one to come out and maybe the one after that. And I have never come out of a Star Wars movie going, you know, my life is better for watching that. You know, it's always like, okay, why do their blasters not hit? Like, why? There's just so many things that I just don't like about it. And that's the reason. It really, there's the main.
Your life was changed by the Joker, though. You did come out of that movie thinking you're like, things are more clear to me now.
Yes, yeah, the Joker, and then what was it, Fight Club back to back, like blew my mind.
Did you see the latest
Joker and Fight Club back to back?
It was pretty much in that time. I had never seen Fight Club before. 23 years old, younger guy here. I had never seen Fight Club, and it had just escaped my universe somehow because it is a movie that I would enjoy by default, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then I had seen the Joker, and then Steven convinced me that I was like, you know what, I need to, because I had like a 3-week or 4-week period in between jobs that I had off. He's like, you need to watch Fight Club. Like that's how it has to be. And I watched Fight Club, and it was like mind blowing back to back on movies.
That makes sense. A good recommendation too.
You know what? And that's what I'm talking about. We come from an era where Fight Club, when it came out, was groundbreaking, right?
Yeah.
You can't make that movie now. Not happening. No, there's no way you can do it. But it had what you were talking about. It had a story that compelled you. You were drawn into the dynamic, spoiler alert, between Edward Norton and Brad Pitt, and then that whole concept. Did you see the latest Star Wars by any chance? Did you see any of the new Star Wars?
I watched the first one, I think The Force Awakens.
Right.
And no, man.
No.
And then after I heard the stories about the second one, and then I heard the stories about the third. I mean, the level of vitriol coming from both sides. And I think that's the thing. No. I take that back. I watched parts of the second one. I couldn't finish it. I put it in, I couldn't. It was the thing that bothered me about those movies. I'm not that big of a Star Wars fan generally,
right?
But what I am a big fan of is good writing. It's hard. It's hard to watch something like that and then listen to the writing staff, the director come out and talk about what they chose to do, and then go, "Oh yeah, I agree." I just it's hard. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I equivocate on that because I'm working on stuff right now with a team. We're writing stuff, and I know how difficult it is because I've sat in writing rooms. As much as I have been in these projects from an actor standpoint, I've also been on the other side several times. I've
Right.
watched people audition all the way up to making decisions about who does what. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
I realize how difficult it is. And so I'm loath to just condemn somebody outright. But what I'm not going to do is not have a spine and tell people their writing is good when it's not. And I think that's my big issue with those films is that, look, should there be women and minorities in Star Wars? Absolutely. Why not? But here's the thing. There were women and minorities in Star Wars in the
Star Wars?
70s. Why are you pretending? Why are you pretending like that's not true? Okay, should there
The
be more?
minority.
Yeah.
The minority was in Star Wars. Billy D. Williams. Let's get it
Billy D.
straight.
Williams. Exactly. And so should there be more? Absolutely. Why not? But here's the thing is that when you let your agenda overtake the story, you kill. And so that's the thing is that for me, I don't want to be a token. I don't want to be a token because what happens to tokens in the story is that they're one-dimensional and they get treated as tokens. And so I've had this discussion many times with many people that I've worked with where they come to me with these ideas and they're like, we're going to represent this person, we're going to represent that person. And what they don't ever seem to get is that I'm not against representation. I'm not against if you want to make your character a gay transgender bat, fine. Do whatever you want to do. If that's the story you want to tell, you're free to do that. But if you don't put that if you put that as their defining characteristic, those, according to you, are immutable characteristics, right? And what's interesting about a character is not their immutable characteristics. It is always their personality, their character, what they choose to do, not what they are. And so if you concentrate only on what they are, you cut your legs off before you ever even get started. And so, again, going back to Star Wars, having a diverse cast is a wonderful thing. It's nice. But all things are good, but not all things are profitable. You know, you got to be able to decide what is more important, and the story is more important. If you make the story and the character development the central thing, and then allow the rest to be, you know, filtered through agenda, by all means, I'll be right there to watch your movie. But if you do it the opposite way, you're telling a trash story and you're doing disservice to those minorities and marginalized people you claim you want to help. You're really just making them into tokens for your own agenda, and that's destructive.
100%. I think we'd be remiss if I didn't ask one question. We got to backtrack a little bit here.
Mm.
I got lost in the interview. Ike, how'd you get started in this whole thing?
Oh,
Thank you. I was gonna do that
too. How
that's
did you
a good
get
question.
started?
So I went to school actually for computer science. When I moved out to California, I was working for a company called stamps.com.
Yep.
And I decided that I had a friend that did voices for Disney. I went to her and I said, hey, I want to, I'd actually, at that time, I was, actually, I was still working at stamps.com when I did this. I went to her and I said, I want to do, you know, I said, I want to do movie trailers. That's really what I wanted to do. Because I loved Don LaFontaine and I wanted to be like Don LaFontaine. And so she sent me to a coach. His name's Bill Holmes. And Bill Holmes basically built my career. You know, when I first met him, I couldn't afford his classes. So I would do his website and program stuff for him so that we could barter for his classes. So I took his classes for about a year. After that, you know, he said, I think you're ready to make a demo. He made my demo. And then from there, I got an agent and I would, at the first couple of years, I was still working odd jobs. Like I would do programming for people. I would do web design. I would do all sorts of different things. Meanwhile, every time I booked something, I would take the money and go buy more classes. And so Bill helped me to know who the best teachers were to go see. So I took classes with Bob Bergen and just a whole bunch of other elite teachers who were working in the business at the time. And so over years, I just moved from one agency to the next agency to the next agency, and just kept working. I'm all about that work ethic. I think the thing that I learned from Bill that has helped me the most is that I practice. When I would leave what he was doing, I was always listening to, people who I wanted to be like. I would have their trailers on repeat. I would have their commercials on repeat. I would have whatever it was, and learning what the techniques were in class. There was a time in my life where I was in class probably 4 nights a week, 3 hours a night, 4 nights a week, doing different voiceover classes, figuring stuff out. And so over time, and the thing is, when I first moved to LA, I did a couple of on-camera things, and it was going fine. It was going great. In fact, I had a series of commercials that were running, and I had a couple of close calls with some guest spots on some of the bigger shows. And so I was starting to move towards that track. And I did this, I did 2 commercials. So I did, I think it was Bud Light and Miller Lite, I think. And so the Miller Lite commercial was on camera, and the Bud Light commercial was voiceover. And so we filmed, or maybe it was the other way around. I don't remember. They were both beers. And so we filmed it at Angel Stadium down in Anaheim. And it was a fun day. It was 16 hours. It was a football type spot. So it was just me and a bunch of dudes hanging out, throwing footballs all day. It was such a good time. But it was a 16-hour day. So the other spot, which was a voiceover spot, I went into a studio in Burbank. I was there for less than an hour, knocked it out real quick, and then I left. And so maybe about a month and a half later, I got the checks for both of these. So just by kismet, it turns out that each of them was doing a series of commercials. They were commercial campaigns. And so the one at Anaheim I was in one of, I think, 5 commercials around that time for football. And then in the voiceover spot, there were 12 voiceover spots, right? But my voice was on all the spots. So over here, I made a certain amount of money, but in voiceover, I made, I think, 5 or 6 times the amount that I made in much less time. And then I was like, huh. And that kind of realigned, what I was putting because I want to be able to, and Steve, you know this, I like to get out to volunteer, to use my time. I have a family. There's a lot of different things that I want to do in my life. I don't want to spend all my days on set. And so I started focusing in this area. And that's the wonderful thing that voiceover has done for me, is that I've been able to, if I want to pack my days, I can do that. But if I don't want to pack my days, it's all good. So, yeah.
What was your first big role? Like
the first on-camera thing that I ever booked was a BP petroleum commercial, which was like one of those man on the street commercials where they ask you, like, what do you think of like gas or something like. I don't remember what the lines were, but I was just and then the first voiceover thing that I ever booked was Black Magic Titanium wheel cleaner. That was the first thing I ever booked. The first big thing I ever booked was like 3 or 4 months after that, which was remember the Ford Flex?
Yes.
Yeah. That Ford Flex commercial campaign, that was my voice. That was the first big thing that I ever.
Is it the one that had Jeter in it? Is the original Ford Flex there was a commercial line for the Ford Flex that had Derek Jeter in it. I know that for a fact. I don't know if it was the first or the second. Yeah, because there was one. I don't remember. Yeah, there was one.
But I imagine it was probably for that.
Okay.
All right.
That's so real.
All right. Well, let's get down to business. Talk to me about Halo. Let's talk about Halo. All right. That's why the people are tuning in. We want to know about Halo. All right.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Take us through it. So you woke up that morning, drank some coffee, and then someone's like, "Hey."
Okay, so the story of Halo 5 is complicated and convoluted, and to be honest, has never actually been told. And so this is something that I still can't tell you the actual details of what happened. I know the day when I will be able to. I can't even tell you that.
There is a 15-year NDA, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
There's a 15-year NDA. We've all had to sign one before.
But let me just suffice it to say that what you have been told about what happened during that development mostly is not true. I'll just say that, and I'll leave it. I know that's a very jerkish thing to do. To
Very
just
vague. I like it.
I thought we had an exclusive going. I was like,
No, I can't. Let me just say that, yeah, most of what you think happened and how you think things went down are not at all how they went down. And that because I am, not just wrapped up in NDAs, but have other things that are on my plate, I cannot go into any more detail about that. I wish I could, but I can't.
All right, I won't do that. But there's one that I got to bring up here because it's like in your very extensive resume, man. There's one that's really special, and it's really special to my mom too. And I didn't realize until I was getting ready for this. I did not know you narrated The Roots, and that's that's huge. It's the 2016 version, and I hadn't known that. Can you just, because I'm sure you understand the gravity of how important that remake was and what that means and stuff like that.
No, actually, I don't.
Okay. What was that like working on The Roots, man? Like, what?
What's funny about that is that it's kind of a similar story. I didn't know what it was. So what happened was that my agent calls me up and is like, hey, I've got something for you. I think it was at the Paramount lot. Can you head out there this afternoon? And I was like, all right. So I went down there. No, I'm sorry. I'm telling the story wrong. That was something else. I auditioned for it first. I didn't know what it was. I auditioned for it first, read the lines, and then I got called to go down there. And so I didn't think I'd gotten it. That was what it was. I didn't know what he's like, can you go to Paramount? So I went down there. And so, I went in there, and then the director comes out and he shakes my hand and he's like, you're going to do the VO, right? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, okay, come with me. And so I walk past, and then sitting right there is Derek Luke. So I shake his hand, meet him. And he goes, Derek, this is the guy that's going to do the voiceover. Derek Luke turns to the director, goes, what's his name? Not Samuel L. Jackson. Lawrence Fishburne. He goes, I thought we were getting Lawrence Fishburne. And he goes, no. EK's gonna do it. Goes, but what about Lawrence Fishburne? He's like, no, EK's fine. He's gonna do a good job. And I was like,
were you standing there for that whole time?
Yes, I was standing right there. I was like, okay, cool.
In his defense, it is Morpheus. You got to respect that, right?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so we go into the sound stage. He puts it up on the screen. We do the ADR. I think we did it 2 or 3 times. He was like, you're done. And I was like, okay, cool. I thought it was like a documentary, like maybe a documentary about the original. I didn't know what it was. And so I did it according to the direction that he gave me. And then I left. And it wasn't until months later that I understood what it was.
It's insane, man, because you are like the Forrest Gump of voice actors. I'm just gonna tell you that. Like Zach, you mind if I just do this now? Because we didn't do it at the top. Star Wars, Old Republic, Halo 5, Call of Duty, Black Ops 3, Fallout 4, StarCraft 2, Legacy of the Void, Rainbow Six Siege, which is on the decline right now, but you were probably a part of it when it was still doing very well. What's your secret, man? You're a working thespian. There are people who cannot do this. What are you doing differently, bro?
That's a good question. I think, well, how do I answer that question?
Tell us so we can do the same thing.
I think it's a couple of things. First of all, like I have, and this is something that I get reminded of from time to time, because sometimes I'll teach classes, and somebody will ask me, what can I do, or so on and so forth like that. And a couple of years ago, I was doing some. My friend Jeff was there, and I was talking about technique and what to do, and he goes, also, you have to have a deep voice. And I was like, no, no, that's not. He was like, no, 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 but you do. And then we started arguing about whether or not you need to have a deep voice.
Dude,
I think that for me, speaking and public speaking is something that is a gift that I have from God. Honestly, it's a gift that I was given. And I think that everyone has their gifts. And so it's up to you what to do with those gifts. Are you going to do nothing with it? Or are you going to refine it? What are you going to do with those gifts? For me, this is one of my gifts. And so that being said, is the baseline. One thing that I learned early on from my parents is that it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It doesn't matter what other people are saying. It matters how you respond. What are you doing? And so that's how I see my career. Like when I first started, you know, I walked into the booth the first day with Bill, and I don't remember what he gave me, but I did whatever it was, and he goes, "You are awful at this, but you got a great voice."
Kind of encouragement I like.
I'll never forget that. And so little by little, I just would refine. And that was the thing about me and him, is that I knew that he could teach me what I needed to know. And so I would just keep going back, keep going back, keep going back, refine. And when I say like I worked hard, I mean I worked hard. I would repeat, repeat, repeat. Because the thing about VO is that, actually the thing about anything is that mastery is not coming to the point where you're doing it all the time. Mastery is coming to the point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable in it. And what that means is that, like, when I walk in to Paramount and Derek Luke is questioning my credentials in front of the director, it doesn't throw me, because I've done it so many times that even in that uncomfortable situation, when you put me in the place, I'll be comfortable and do what I came to do. And so that came from hours and hours and hours of repetition, of going and checking it again. There was actually a point, maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years into my career, where all of a sudden things just fell apart. Like I couldn't book anything anymore. I wasn't working. I was just like, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. So I went to Bill and I said, Bill, I don't think I can do this. I think I got to go get a different job. And he was like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm not booking anything. He said, okay, well, let's hear you read. So I got up and he gave me a piece of copy and I did it. And he goes, what happened to your focus? What's happening? And we talked about that, but I realized that I just come to a point where I was putting all these expectations on myself and all this anxiety. And so what I realized was the only way to deal with that was to do it over and over. So instead of doing my auditions at home for a year and a half, every time I got an audition, I would get up, drive to Bill's office and do it in front of him. Because when I was doing it in front of my teacher was my most nervous. So I found the point where I was most anxious, most nervous, and I would go and do it in front of that person over and over and fail at it over and over and over until one day I wasn't failing anymore. And that's how I went from person to, for each teacher I would sit at their feet and learn what they had to say and then go repeat the practice on what that was over and over and over until no matter what the situation, I would be comfortable. Like this COVID-19 situation that's happening right now. So I'm working on these commercials that I've been working for a couple of weeks now, and I can't talk about it much more than that. But I'm switching. It's 2 ad agencies, so I'm switching between I think 4 different directors, and they switch, and everybody has different requirements, and everybody has a different working style, and so on and so forth like that. But because I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing, I can listen and adjust and focus, and it's just practice. So I guess that was a very long diatribe about practice.
No, that's totally fine. That's our entire show here. Really, it truly is. I got one question before we let you go. We're kind of over the 45-minute mark that we thought we would stick by, which never really happens. Do you have a dream role? Do you have a role that is out there, that is in your head, that maybe you thought you would get, or thought you wanted when you first started, or that was that was an end goal? Do you have it? What is the dream?
Vader is the dream. Vader is the dream.
I knew it.
I've come so close to Vader so many times. So many times. So many times. And it doesn't make sense. I always okay. So if it's one thing when I lose out to like there was a show a little while ago. Can I even talk about that? But anyway, it came down between me and James Earl Jones, and I lost to James Earl Jones, and that's what it is. And that's happened a couple of times. It is what it is. It's his. He made the role.
Right.
It is what it is. But several other times, I've lost the role to people who were, let me say, inferior in quality. And I don't often say that.
Oh, that's,
I don't know.
That's kind of energy I like.
I don't often say that. But Vader is mine, and it should be mine. And that's really what I want. I mean, I'm working on some of my own stuff, and you know, I definitely want to play key roles in that. But the thing that I really, really want is Vader. Yeah,
okay. I thought that was you in Fallen Order, and when I found out it wasn't, I uninstalled the game, broke it, threw it out.
Actually, he had it on a separate hard drive just in case. Yeah, I threw the hard drive at the ground.
Oh man, Ike, it's been a pleasure having you on, man. We really appreciate you doing this for us, brother. You're our first official interview here, talking with a dad, and you probably didn't do much research on the show before this, and we know you're not coming back after this. So that's
how I feel every week.
How did you know? Yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen.
You want to shout out any projects you can't talk about before you head out, or?
I think that Superman movie is going to be killer. It's amazing. What else can I talk about? That's the problem, is that I can't talk about it.
He's under so
but I've got
agreements.
some great stuff coming this year. I can't talk about any of it, but it's going to be amazing. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. You stay safe in these times. Give my love to the family, brother.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, guys. You guys have a good night, okay?
Yes, thank you. You too, man.
I'm back in it. I'm back in it.
No, we're continue on here. We got a few topics we want to discuss and cover before we let the viewers go here. Steve's having a little bit of internet issue. I don't know if it's Steve or if it's actually Discord. Some stuff going on here. What's up?
My sound off, or was my picture?
You're coming in very robot-y, pixelated. So we're gonna let this see if we can let this pass here. We're trying to work through it actually. Really, there's one topic that we even remotely care about coming up. It's UFC 249 officially happening in Florida today, right? Essentially today for when this video comes out. I don't even know what to think about it anymore.
Listen, all right. So you said you didn't watch any, but you didn't watch any of the countdown or any of that stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah. Actually, before we get into it, do you mind leaving the call and then coming back in and see if we can fix this for a second? Sorry, my level of OCD doesn't allow me to let something like that happen. All right, turn the video back on there, buddy. There we go, ladies and
How about that? Testing 1, 2, 3.
No, it's about the same. It's about the same. We'll just work through it.
If it's horrible, it's horrible. I'll just leave. I'm gonna mute my mic and I'm just gonna do the face reactions to everything you say.
All right, that works for me. I could go on rants forever. So Steve's gonna do the pixelated. Actually, Steve looks like pixel art right now. Looks pretty sick. He's frozen in what I can only imagine. Oh, he's gone, ladies and gentlemen. He's gone, ladies and gentlemen. He got up and left. If you were not aware, we do a video version of this podcast. You should come over and watch it on youtube.com/talkingwithadad. So UFC 249 coming up. Let me pull up the card here. Big card. First card back from the pandemic. First thing we're going to be doing. First sports that's coming back, essentially. Let's see. UFC 249 card. I don't want to go to the website. So what we're having here is Tony Ferguson. Steve's now back. He just ran around his house at least twice. Look at it. He looks sweaty and disgusting, if I might add. Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. This fight has the ability to be a very, very good fight, but it also has the ability to end up in a direction that no one wants, that ruins the potential Tony Khabib fight, which is everyone wants, right? Justin Gaethje goes in, definitely has the ability and has the hands and the power, essentially, to knock out Tony Ferguson. I don't know if we've ever seen Tony knocked out. The last time he lost, I believe, was over a decade ago to Michael Johnson in a decision. So, oh, Steve, look, your video's back. You might be good now.
Michael Johnson is the greatest fighter to ever do it.
Hey, Steve's back in full force, ladies and gentlemen. So going on to the co-main event here, Henry Cejudo, Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz is getting a title shot after not fighting for the last decade. The exact opposite of what Tony Ferguson has done. Then we move on to, we got Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstruik. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, my friend. I know you're listening.
That's gonna be it. That's a sleeper fight.
That's an incredible fight. Honestly, yeah. I don't think Francis wins it. I think this guy is really good striking.
I was actually when I was watching Francis in the embedded. Listen, the man's in great shape. I was a little concerned by his demeanor and posture, but I'm not going to let that be the reason I think he loses the fight. I actually want to see how Francis has grown in this time off. So,
sure, see. That's fair. Another sleeper fight, I think. Jeremy Stevens, Calvin Kattar. Stevens always puts on a good fight. Calvin Kattar always puts on a good fight. Jeremy Stevens missed weight by 4.5 pounds. Yes. Don't even care about the other fight on the card there. Other than that, we have Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone. I think that'll be an okay fight. We'll see. This might be Donald Cerrone's last fight, to be fair.
Yeah.
If he comes out of this again saying that his head's not in it, like he said with Conor, then honestly, I don't see him going much further. Fighting is one of those sports. If you're halfway in, halfway out, it's a bad time. You get
knocked out.
It is a bad time.
He has nothing else to prove. I just want to say around the one thing. I think you said Jacare tested positive, correct?
Oh, yes. I was going to get to that. You didn't let me get to that, Steve.
Hold on for a second. Was his opponent Uriah Hall?
He was the one who's fighting Uriah Hall, yeah.
That's a good look for Uriah because I did not have him winning that fight. Uriah Hall, I'm on record saying, is one of my favorite fighters.
Yes, you are. I didn't have him. Unfortunately, you're coming a little bit robot-y again, so the people at home might not be able to fully understand the implications Steve you're trying to make here. Then there's Alexei Olenek versus Fabricio Verdum. I think this might be a sleeper fight. Is this Verdum coming back after a layoff potentially? After probably an injury, most likely.
Tested positive for steroids.
Yeah, that's the kind of injury I like to hear about. Michelle Waterson, Carla Esparza. I think it's a really hard fight for Michelle Waterson. Michelle Waterson wants to be the first champion that's also a mother. Honestly, she won't be because Cyborg has a child. I don't know if you knew that. Chris Cyborg has a kid. So Michelle Waterson, you're kind of out the door there. I also don't think you're that great of a fighter.
Can we prove that it's her kid?
No, but I know she was a kid. So also, Amanda Nunes is having a child, so she better get it in the next fucking 8.5 months. Go ahead, Steve. You can come in here with your heretic answers here. Vicente Luque versus Nico Price. This would be a good look for Vicente Luque. I don't think Nico Price. Nico Price is the guy that got upkicked or did the upkick recently? He did the upkick, right? Okay.
Yeah, so he did the upkick.
Okay, all right, okay. Your voice is good enough where you may speak again. Let's see. And early prelims, Bryce Mitchell, don't care. Although Bryce Mitchell has this really weird cult following where they all want Reebok to give him these camo fight shorts. And Ryan Spann versus Sam Alvey. Light heavyweight, okay. This is like, we're deep here into the teens, which is funny because the division's not even that deep. Really, the big news, though, coming out of it is Jacare testing positive for the pandemic after a family member of his had tested positive. He announced it when he arrived on Wednesday. He was seen facing off the Uriah Hall at a much bigger than 6 foot distance with both have masks on for the most kind of precaution. Fucking spider on my wall. I almost just screamed.
Let it out.
Holy shit.
Is it a wolf spider?
I don't fucking know, and I don't want to talk about it, to be fair. Honestly, that's kind of all we wanted to talk about, but we're having some technical issues on Steve's side. I actually do blame Steve for it entirely. Is that it, Steve?
Where can the people find us at?
Oh, okay. I was ready for the outro already. Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the episode 30 of Talking with a Dad. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, all Talking with a Dad. Thank you again for Ike for coming on. He was an incredible guest. It's such a real high bar for guests going forward. He was a great interview. I hope he'd willing to come back at some point. Maybe when he can announce some of the stuff that he's been working on. Maybe we can go and talk about that and have him on, talk about some topics. Steve, anything you want to add at the end here?
I love you guys.